Brisket smoked in an electric smoker is amazingly delicious. Low and slow at 225 with 1 hour per pound, the aesthetics of the resulting brisket are beautiful. But the only thing that is missing to complete the masterpiece is a coveted pink colored smoke ring just beneath the bark. Until recently I thought it was impossible with an electric smoker. While researching for the previous video on Texas brisket, I learned that in brisket smoking competitions, judges often pay very little mind to the smoke ring because it can be produced without actually smoking. Here's a result of my research, a beautiful smoke ring with an electric smoker, and I'll show you how. The pink smoke ring in a brisket is actually the result of a chemical reaction. Burning wood produces smoke with high amounts of nitric oxide and carbon monoxide. Both gases bind to the myoglobin in the exposed brisket and preserve the pink color, while the inner part of the meat continues to oxidize to its cooked brown color. With extended slow cook times with burning wood, the result is a coveted smoke ring. With electric smokers, the source of heat is a heating element, and the smoke produced from the wood chips, while providing great flavor to the meat, produce very little nitric oxide to achieve a smoke ring. However, as I'll show you, the chemical reaction can be replicated with curing salt that contains sodium nitrite. Well, here's the secret, or a secret to me at least. I couldn't find exact information on how to use a curing salt. I had the typical questions: what type of curing salt, how much, mix it with rub or apply it directly on the brisket, can I still use the beef broth? Luckily I was able to get a beautiful smoke ring on the first try. Here's how I did it. I began by prepping the brisket as normal, unpacked it, removing it from the wrapper, sharpened my knife incorrectly, and trimmed the fat cap, then injected it with about a cup of broth. I wasn't sure how much curing salt to use. The directions indicate using 1 teaspoon for every 5 pounds of meat. This was a 13-pound brisket, so I figured using about a tablespoon, that's the equivalent of 3 teaspoons. Enough for a 15-pound brisket. I decided to apply the curing salt prior to the rub. The clear glass salt shaker allowed me to eyeball the amount of salt I was applying and how much I had left to ensure consistent coverage. The salt was very fine and it adhered really well to the surface of the meat. I did the same with the fat cap, although I wasn't sure how well the curing salt would penetrate the fat cap to reach the actual meat. I transferred the brisket to a disposable aluminum full-size pan. These come in real handy when preparing brisket, and they're really economical. I covered the entire brisket with rub on both sides, making sure to cover the sides as well. It's a good idea to put the brisket on the rack before placing it in the smoker. The full-size aluminum pans are the same length and width as the smoker racks, so it keeps you from making a mess, although I usually make one anyways. I smoked this brisket overnight, and the low was about 17 degrees Fahrenheit. At 8 a.m. it was going to be about 24 degrees, so I decided to set the smoker at 235 degrees rather than the 225 degrees I always recommend. I also placed hot water from the tap in the water basin to help it along. I added hickory wood chips for the first 3 hours of smoking. The full cook was going to be about 12 hours. Because of the concerns I had about the freezing temperatures, I used my stick-up ring camera so I could monitor the brisket temperature overnight, also so I didn't have to go outside. The Ring app on your smartphone is a convenient way to monitor your smoker when you have to leave it unattended or if you have to leave the house to the store, for example. You can also use Alexa skills to display your Ring cameras on your TV. Show living room.
Okay.
This makes it easy to keep an eye on your smoke anywhere. Okay, now getting back to the brisket. When I pulled it out of the smoker, the temperature had reached 200 degrees Fahrenheit, measured at the thickest part. I wrapped the brisket in red butcher paper and foil and allowed it to rest for about 30 minutes. Generally, I like to wrap it in a towel and let it sit longer, but I was running short on time. Reviewing the brisket with the fat cap down, it came out real nice, and I noticed part of the meat rupturing through the bark that's red, a good sign for the smoke ring. Here was the moment of truth. The smoke ring came out real nice. The only thing I noticed was that the meat facing the heat source was a little drier on the outside, but it didn't affect the tenderness on the inside. It was falling apart tender. Some final notes. This was a 13-pound brisket cooked for 12 hours at 235 degrees Fahrenheit to an internal temperature of 200 degrees. It rested for 30 minutes, wrapped in red butcher paper and foil. As for the curing salt, 1 teaspoon per 5 pounds of meat is plenty. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. Stay tuned for a couple more videos on smoking meats and other things I learned. Stay safe and God bless.